Our story begins during the climax of the Cell games. Perfect Cell is in a beam struggle with Son Gohan to decide the fate of the world. Already feeling the pushback, Cell realizes that he isn't going to win this. As such, he decides that he will at least ensure that he will live on in some shape or form. So right before he gets obliterated, he makes one last Cell Jr., taking extra care in what little time he had left to imbue it with more intelligence than the others, leaving it with his final wishes.
Finish what I started. Survive. Destroy Earth. Kill Son Gohan!
He shoots out this Cell Jr. and has it burrow itself underground, and then Perfect Cell is killed in the beam struggle. The Earth is saved and the Z-Fighters fly back to the lookout to use the Dragon Balls and to get Gohan some medical treatment. In their haste, they neglected to try and sense any remaining key signatures in the area, leaving this Cell Jr. to get out of the ground. His father's final wishes echo in his head, and he vows to get revenge on that damned Son Gohan and his friends. However, he isn't a fool. He knows that his current power isn't enough, so he decides that training would be the best route. After all, bringing countless amounts of people would just draw attention to himself and get him killed. He also realizes that since he has the DNA of the world's greatest fighters and their techniques, that it would just be better to master those and use them to their fullest instead of trying to grow in base power alone. So, he retreats into an uninhabited forest filled with lush green trees and other life, and he trains for 7 long years. His father was far too arrogant and prideful and thought he was the penultimate perfect being. Well, look where that got him. This Cell would be willing to use techniques that increase his base power, like the Kaioken, which he would be able to use much more effectively than anyone else due to his regeneration and durability. From sunrise till sundown, day by day, he would train. Every day, he would attempt to shatter any limits he had and would do so until he would collapse from exhaustion. He would take all of the best and most useful techniques he could access, no matter how situational they may be, and honed them to the best he could. He also decides that, instead of just relying on power, he would actually use the martial arts knowledge that he has in order to make use of his power far better than his father could have ever done. After all, he needs every advantage he can get. Cell Jr. ends up combining the fighting styles and stances of the Turtle School, Crane School, the Saiyans, and the Namekians into one creation of his own, taking the best parts of each and removing the imperfections. One day while he was training, he ends up seeing someone in a strange costume flying. Cell gets curious and ends up following the stranger to observe him for a bit. After all, he doesn't have access to much in the realm of entertainment. He watches on as this stranger seems to be apprehending criminals of some sort. He then hears a police officer congratulate the stranger, calling him Saiyaman. Wait, Saiyaman? As in Saiyan, the same race that damned Son Gohan belongs to? He thinks about it, and yes, this was most likely true. There aren't many life forms on this planet with supernatural abilities, and not only would Gohan have obviously grown since then, but Cell Jr. knows for a fact that Vegeta, the only other Saiyan around, would never do anything this silly. As Cell retreats back into the forest, he begins thinking about how he could take advantage of this new information. He then walks by a billboard advertising a superhero movie, and gets an idea. Using one of Piccolo's abilities, Cell Jr. gives himself some armor-like clothing. He gains a mask over his face, spikes all over him, and he even covers his wings, as if he would need them. He also covers his tail, making it look like a massive metal spike coming out of his lower back. He also takes up the name Might Offspring, as using his real name would most likely put Son Gohan on too much guard. His plan is very simple. Hold the building hostage to bait Son Gohan into showing up, and then accomplish his goal. This, for the most part, goes very well. He chooses a random bank, as banks seem to be what criminals most love to rob, and then he plays it up like he's gonna kill his hostages unless the police meet his demands, yada yada yada. As he is playing up the charade, however, a teenage girl appears and the police ask if she would be able to help.
Well, she isn't Son Gohan, so she isn't important.
This girl, Videl as they call her, seems to disagree with this and says that she'll try to sneak into the building and free the hostages while the police distract the Bugman. Normally, Cell would have been annoyed by this if prior he hadn't heard a police officer ask Videl where the Great Saiyaman was, with her replying that he seems to be busy with something. Cell then realizes that she could be far more useful to him than he originally thought. He then waited until Videl snuck inside the building and captured her, putting her down with the rest of the hostages.
While I do find all of this to be quite irritating, I must thank you, Miss Videl. Your capture will surely make your precious son Gohan show up far sooner than he would have originally.
Videl then asks what any of this has to do with Son Gohan, before Cell replies to this with a slight chuckle.
I see. So you didn't know that he was the person behind that foolish Great Saiyaman persona? I guess you weren't as close as I thought.
Videl was in shock at this news. Gohan is Saiyaman? That dork? Granted, that would explain why he was so strange and acted how he did, but it's still a lot to process. Eventually, Gohan arrives at the scene, with Cell waiting him at the entrance to the bank.
Well, well, look who finally showed up. I've been waiting, you know, for years in fact, training to the brink of exhaustion every day just to defeat you.
Cell then gets into a fighting stance. It is strange, and it is simultaneously alien to Gohan, yet familiar.
I don't know who you are or what you want, but I will not let you endanger the lives of the innocent for whatever selfish reasons you may have,
said Gohan, readying his own fighting stance while still in the character of the Great Saiyaman. And then they begin to fight. Cell lunges at Gohan, surprising the Half Saiyan due to this villain not only being able to use Ki, but also being so fast that he barely has time to block. While fighting, Gohan still has that feeling that he had when he first saw the strange villain's fighting stance, but he chooses to ignore it for now and focus on the fight.
Just who is this guy? Gohan thinks. I've never met him before. In fact, nobody's ever met him before, but he's so strong. His energy is also so strange yet familiar. He almost reminds me of...
Just then, before Gohan could complete his thought, he is kicked to the ground, destroying the street he landed on before Cell then fires off an energy blast as Gohan just managed to get back on his feet. The people of the area had already evacuated to let the two superpowered beings fight it out. Well, all except for one Videl Satan, watching as the fight went on. This resulted in Gohan's helmet being cracked open, revealing a part of his face.
You've grown soft over the years, son Gohan. I'm quite disappointed, says Cell in his usual tone.
How do you know that name? Says Gohan, eyes widening before they narrowed and his fists clenched.
Gohan then transforms into a Super Saiyan. He figures that he can't worry about the Golden Warrior connection or anything like that as of now. If he doesn't kick things up a notch, he could die. He begins charging back at Cell. Before Gohan could reach him, however, Cell fires off a solar flare, blinding the hero as he begins to make his escape. You see, Cell realized that this fight was beginning to cause too much energy to be released, so much so that there would be a risk of one of the other Z fighters flying over to the battlefield. While Cell thinks he could take on Son Gohan, he would rather not take the chance of fighting the rest of the Z fighters with him.
While this has been enjoyable, son Gohan, I think we should end it here. After all, I wouldn't want one of your friends, like, say, Piccolo, interrupting us.
He then flies off, much to the chagrin of Gohan. Gohan then powers down, realizing that the threat is over. He begins wondering again who that person was, before he looked around and realized that Videl was still there.
And his mask had broken during the fight, and he went Super Saiyan, and that villain said his real name. Gohan has a lot of explaining to do.
Back with Cell, the Bugman is just realizing that if he were to defeat Son Gohan, he would need to do it somewhere that wouldn't have a risk of the fight being interrupted. He is then reminded of something that he saw in an advertisement while flying through the city that caught his eye. The 25th Tenkaichi Budokai.